Hello students. Today is session number 3 of Chemistry chapter 2, that is matter around us pure? In the previous sessions we have discussed about types of mixtures, that is solution, suspension and colloids. Solutions are homogeneous in nature. Suspensions and colloids are heterogeneous in nature. Now in today's session we will be starting with topic 2.3 of our NCERT textbook, that is separating the components of a mixture. We know that most of the natural substances are not chemically pure. They are either mixed with the impurities of the other substances or are the mixtures of some substances. In order to study the properties of individual substances, we need each component of the mixture in pure state. So different methods have been used to separate the individual components of a mixture. Now the components of heterogeneous mixture can be separated by simple physical methods like hand picking, threshing, winnowing, sieving, evaporation and many more. All these techniques, they are used in our day-to-day life. All these methods we have already studied in detail in lower classes, that is hand picking, threshing, winnowing and sieving. Now today we will be focusing on the special techniques which are used to separate the components of a mixture, whether it is homogeneous or heterogeneous. Some of these special techniques are evaporation, centrifugation, separating funnel, sublimation, chromatography and distillation. In today's session, we will be focusing on the first three methods, that is evaporation, centrifugation and separating funnel technique. Now how can we obtain the colored component, that is dye, from the ink? Blue or black ink is a homogeneous mixture of blue or black dye. Dye is the solute in water, which is the solvent. The components of this mixture can be separated by the process of evaporation. For this technique, we will be discussing an activity. Put few drops of blue or black ink on a watch glass and place it on the beaker, which is half filled with water. The water in the beaker is heated, and because of the steam which is evolved, it heats up the ink also. The water which is present in the ink, it will evaporate and ultimately the blue or black dye, the residue will be left on the watch glass. Here we have to note that direct heating of ink is avoided because the blue or black dye, it may decompose on direct heating. Here we observe that the water gets evaporated from the watch glass and the residue is left. This residue is nothing but the colored component, that is dye. This method can be used to separate the non-volatile components, that is the solutes, which are dissolved in the volatile solvent. This is the principle based behind the process of evaporation. This technique is very useful method to obtain the color component from the blue or black ink. In this experiment, ink is the colloidal solution, that is, it is a heterogeneous mixture of dye mixed with water, and here the water evaporates and the dye is left out. There are various applications of the process of evaporation. It is used on commercial scale to obtain common salt from the seawater. Seawater is collected in open shallow beds during the high tide, and then it is allowed to evaporate in hot sun. The salt which is left behind is collected purified in the factories and it is sold in markets. Now how you will separate cream from milk? Sometimes the solid particles in the liquid mixture, they are very small and does easily pass through the filter paper. Here such particles, they cannot be separated by the process of filtration. So where we cannot use the process of filtration, such mixtures can be easily separated by a technique which is called as centrifugation. So here we will discuss an activity to separate cream from milk. The milk is put into a closed container in a big centrifuge machine. And when the centrifuge machine is switched on, the milk is rotated at very high speed in the container, because of which the milk separates into cream and skimmed milk. Here cream is lighter, so it floats over the surface, and milk, it settles down. Here the centrifugation process involves the application of centrifugal force. And the principle based here is that when the mixture is rotated at high speed, the lighter particles, that is the cream, stays on the surface of the liquid, while the heavier particles, that is milk, are forced to the bottom of the liquid. So denser particles are forced to the bottom and lighter particles stay at the top. The applications of this process are: this technique is used in diagnostic laboratories for blood and urine test. It is also used in dairies and homes to separate the butter from cream. It is also used in laboratories and industries for separating the suspended impurities from the liquids. Centrifugation technique is also used in washing machines to squeeze out the water from the wet clothes. Now how we will separate a mixture of two immiscible liquids? Immiscible liquids, that is by using a separating funnel. Here we will discuss one activity for explaining this process. Kerosene oil and water, they do not mix with each other. When these liquids are mixed, they form two separate layers. They are not mixing with each other. So they are called as immiscible liquids. These liquids, they form heterogeneous mixtures. The individual components of such heterogeneous mixtures can be separated by using a separating funnel. Here we will be discussing an activity for separating the mixture of kerosene oil and water. Pour the mixture of kerosene oil and water in a separating funnel. Here we have shown the picture that how the experiment is conducted. The separating funnel is allowed to stand for some time with the kerosene oil and water. After some time, they form two separate layers. Kerosene oil being lighter in weight, it forms the upper layer, and water being heavier, it forms the lower layer. The boundary of the separation of the two liquids is clearly visible here. Now place a beaker below the funnel and open the stopcock. The lower layer of the water is run out carefully. Close the stopcock of the separating funnel as soon as the oil layer reaches the stopcock. And now remove the beaker containing water and replace it by another beaker. Once again open the stopcock and pour the upper kerosene layer in it. In this way we can separate water and kerosene. The principle based behind this technique is difference in their densities. One which is denser will go down, that is water, and which is less denser, that is oil, it will be forming the upper part of the layer. So here we can say that two immiscible liquids can be separated from each other by using a separating funnel. Now this technique is used to separate a mixture of oil and water or the mixtures of any two immiscible liquids like benzene and water or chloroform and water or even carbon tetrachloride and water. It is also used to extract the organic compounds which are present in the aqueous solutions using a water immiscible organic solvent like chloroform or benzene. In the blast furnace, during the extraction of iron, two separate layers are formed. The upper layer consists of the molten slag, while the lower layer consists of the molten iron. The lighter slag is removed from the upper hole, while the molten iron is removed from the bottom hole of the furnace. So in this way, we can say that separating funnel is also very important technique for separation of immiscible liquids. In the next sessions, we will be discussing about how to separate miscible liquids, the process of sublimation and chromatography. Thank you, children.